Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, so you know what we're about to do. Let's get at it. Fani Willis has been under a lot of pressure from all different sides, and recently, and she's actually definitely earned it and justified it. But she's gotten a lot of pushback as of late. And what I wanted to do tonight was do what I'm going to call a watch party. And what I want to do is, there we go. The Atlanta debate series is actually going on today, right now. And Fani Willis is nowhere to be seen. She's in Miami at a Cocktails and Conversations, a national black community organizer event. It's kind of weird. And to me, I thought rather, that she would want to. My volume is kind of low, she says. Let's bring that volume back up. Hopefully that sounds a little better. Let's try that. Make that a little better before I get too far afield. How do I sound now, Shara? How do I sound now? And I'll just keep talking. I'll wait for you to comment real quick, Shara. But she's gotten a lot of pushback because she, instead of being in the debate series where she's debating against her Democrat as well as still a little low. Well, that's not cool. I wonder why. What's going on? What's going on? All right, let's check this out. I don't know why it's low, so let's do this. Drop that out. I'm going to listen on YouTube myself. It is kind of low. I wonder why. I tell you, this thing is going to keep me humble. I'm going to tell you that right now. YouTube is going to keep you humble. No matter what you try to do, it's going to make sure that you don't do more than what you need to be doing. All right, let's see. And maybe I just need to talk a little louder too. All right. I'm using my quiet storm voice. Okay, I'll take that. Sure, absolutely. So, again, it has nothing to do with the Donald J. Trump case. It has nothing to do with anything like that. Really, the pushback that Fani's been getting is really centered around whether or not she does her job effectively. And I think communicating how you've done your job and why you should be reelected or why you deserve this promotion, why you deserve to be able to continue in this job should be kind of a big deal for Fani. But instead of that, because the debate series is tonight, rather than being there for the taping of the debate series, she's in Miami, Florida, at a conference that really didn't make a lot of sense to me at all. And I think it's interesting because she has a Democratic candidate as well as a Republican candidate, and both of them want her job. And instead of being there to justify why I need to be able to keep my job, why you should keep hiring, why you should go into that box and support me, and such of that nature. No, we are going to go to Miami for a conference. And again, it really didn't look. It doesn't look like, when you weigh it out, importance of you pushing and telling people of Fulton County why you deserve your job versus going to Miami for a workshop convention thingy. And I've seen pictures and I've seen clips from it. It doesn't look as important as she would like to sell it. But one of the things I notice is that this is an opportunity for her to talk about why she should, what she's done. So it's a one-way conversation, if you will. It's a monologue. She's talking at this thing, not having a conversation or a debate with people who also want to ask questions and so on and so forth. So I do think that's one of the big issues. So what I did was I found the initial debate that she had with Paul Howard just 3 years ago. And I thought it was really interesting because what she said about Paul Howard back 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, is very interesting because a lot of that stuff can really be applied to her today. So we're going to take a second, check that out, and kind of get some feedback. This is going to be a watch party. So I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of talking. Actually, I'm going to probably stop after a moment. We're going to jump into the chat and we're going to just go at it like that and just watch and comment and give our feedback and all that kind of good stuff like that. But before we get too far, I want to first of all say thank you to each and every one of you that is, in fact, watching this with me. Thank you so much for your your comments. Thank you so much for coming in, hitting that like button when you walked in. You got yourself something to drink. You got yourself comfortable. I really do appreciate it. I also appreciate everybody who watched our first ever Christian content creator live meetup live stream earlier today from Podium Studios. That was a lot of fun. Shout out to Q from Q's Corner, Rick from Caldwell Apologetics, Kevin from Off Code Podcast, as well as April from the Standard of Truth Podcast. That was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And if you didn't get a chance to check it out, the link will be down in the description. And it's the link from the last video that was earlier today. They just went over a conversation with Dr. Umar Johnson about the Black church. And it was really informative. So hopefully you had an opportunity to check that out. If not, check that out after we get done here on this evening. And Mary, as Mary said right here, make sure y'all listen to what Mary said. Mary said, make sure you like this video. And I agree. Make sure you like the video. Thank you so much. All right. So how we're going to do this is my first time ever doing this. Just going to pull up the video. I'm going to get out of the screen and we're going to just talk in the chat. So hopefully you're not going to have to hear me very much anymore because we're going to be listening to Fani and Paul Howard and Christian Wright and what's the other guy's name? Richie guy, Dr. Richie. So lots of cool stuff. So let's go ahead and pull that in, Jason. We hopefully did that right, prayerfully.
Thank you once again to both.
All right, we got it. Rashard Richie's in. That's what it was. Rashard Richie. All right. I'm going to play real quick. Just drop it in and let me know that you can hear it. And I'm going to get out of the way. Thank you so much, Shar, for dropping that link to that. Let's just let it play for a second. Let me make sure that you all can hear it.
Thank you once again to both of you, Councilwoman Willis and Councilwoman Gums, the City of South Fulton, to the Cedar Grove Association, to the candidates and our audience at large, especially those.
All right, just real quick. Can you just real quick in the chat, drop a 1 in the chat if you can hear it. Drop a 1 in the chat. I can hear it perfectly, but I want to make sure you all are, all right, everybody can hear it. Perfect. That's what I want to hear. Drop the 1 in the chat. Let's do that 1 in the chat thing. We haven't done that in a while. Love it. All right. So we're just going to watch it and feel free to comment down in the chat. If there's anything important that I really need to stop it for, I'll definitely stop and we'll jump in and have a conversation. Otherwise, we're just going to talk in the chat. So this is going to be a watch party. And we might do a little bit of intermission because it's a little over an hour. So we might do an intermission, maybe just and catch up and make sure everybody's good and all that kind of good jazz. But with no further ado, everybody, thank y'all so much. Future, good to see you. His servant, thank you so much for stopping by. Leslie, I'm glad that you can hear. Thank you so much. Of course, Shara is always here. Good to see you, friend. I love it, love it. Now, you're a lot quieter than the video. Why am I so quiet, I wonder? I have no idea. Let me do one more check. Let me check one more thing before I, yeah, I don't know what's wrong with my audio. Did I change anything? I did not. But let me just real quick. Tawanda, is everything okay? Prayerfully, you're doing okay. I didn't know about this. Hopefully, everything's all right. Keep us posted. Let us know what's going on. All right, real quick, just checking my mic app. All right, saying that. Yeah, everything looks the same. It does sound low, though. I don't know why. But I'm going to do the very last thing. All right, last check. And then we're going to get this party going because don't want to be too long tonight. All right. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. So I will fall out of the way. Let's pull this video in. And ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, here's our watch party. Let's go.
Live, work, and or play in Fulton County. I will go over the rules, and if anyone has a question, speak now, forever hold your peace. The rules are as follows. Each candidate will receive 2 minutes in their opening remark. 2 minutes. You will get a 10-second warning, and that 10-second warning will be told to you. And if you don't wrap up in 10 seconds, we will cut your microphone to continue things and make it move. Q&A, you will have 2 minutes. I'm extending that because we only have 3 who are confirmed, and we will have 2 minutes for your regular Q&A. That segment will be done by yours truly. If you decide to mention your opponent's name, or if you give strong indication that you're talking about your opponent, I will give the opponent an opportunity to rebuttal. That rebuttal will last for 30 seconds. I retain the right to determine if you have, in fact, invoked the person of your opponent in your answer. Also, during our final segment before your outro, Miss Elise Fisher, president of the Cedar Grove Association, will give questions from the audience. Those questions will build as we continue the forum. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Do not.
All right.
No.
Thank you. And do we have our third candidate? I see DA Howard. I see Judge Fani. I don't see the third candidate.
Dr. Richie, he's on.
He's on.
Okay, so we do have Christian Wise Smith. Thank you. Here's how we're going to do the opening. All right, I'm doing everything alphabetical order. So I will do alphabetical order going backwards, and then I will do it the other way at the closing remark time. And so based on that qualifier, the first person in the intro will be Miss Fani Willis. And I want to remind everyone, you all did get an email, but remember, in your opening remarks, 3 things we want you to answer in your opener. 1, how long have you been a resident of Fulton County? 2, how or why did you decide to run for the office of district attorney? And 3, what is your vision for Fulton County in this particular office? And so we will begin with Miss Fani Willis.
Good evening, Councilwoman Gums, Councilwoman Willis, and Moderator Richie. I want to thank the Cedar Grove Community Association for sponsoring this event and all the citizens who are taking time out this evening to watch this important forum. My name is Fani Willis, and I have been a resident of Fulton County for 16 years, and I reside here with my 2 daughters. I am running for district attorney because a change is desperately needed. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office is currently broken. God has provided me all the tools I need to do this job excellently and keep our community safe. I am a proud HBCU alumnus and a graduate of Howard University and a 1996 graduate of Emory Law School. I have been practicing law in this very community for 24 years, 18 years as a prosecutor and 6 as a criminal defense attorney. I have tried well in excess of 100 cases and managed the largest division of this particular office. After many rally cries of citizens who were concerned both with crime and with the character of the current district attorney, I resigned from being the chief judge in the city of South Fulton to run for this seat. The job of district attorney is vital to our community. The office has 245 employees, a $20+ million budget, and the individual who leads it is the chief law enforcement officer for this county. The job must be done by someone with the experience to know how to do the work, the integrity to do the work compassionately, and the temperament to work cooperatively with the criminal justice partners. I am the only person on this ballot that possesses all of those qualities. My plans for the office are to bring innovation, integrity, and inclusiveness on day 1. I am asking voters to cast a vote on June 9th, 2020 for Fani Willis for district attorney. Thank you.
Mr. Christian Wise Smith, you have your 2-minute introduction.
Is he on mute?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now. Go ahead, sir.
Do I need to start over?
Yes, sir. We did not hear any intro.
Okay, sorry. Hello, everybody. Hello, Councilwoman Gums, Councilwoman Willis, Ms. Fisher, Dr. Richie. Hello to Paul and Fani as well. My name is Christian Wise Smith. I'm running for Fulton County DA to transform the justice system into one that values people over conviction rates. This election is very personal to me because I was born and raised in the system. At 5, I saw my mother arrested for the first time. At 7, I saw my grandmother stripped down to her underwear and handcuffed. I have an uncle serving life for murder. My mother lost custody of me after an arrest, and I was kicked out of school at 17. One of my good friends was killed growing up in the streets, and my entire childhood is filled with memories of seeing my friends and family constantly in and out of the system. So overcoming all of that just to finish high school was a big feat for me. Then I went on to finish college, graduate school, and law school. And that gives me the unique ability to identify root causes of crime to help us combat crimes in ways much wiser than we have up to this point. I've been a resident of Fulton County for 2 years, and my vision for the office is for us to no longer waste resources and manpower on nonviolent offenses, but instead to partner with community providers for treatment and services instead of sentences. And if we shift our resources toward combating violent and serious crimes, we make a safer county for all of us. And we do this in a lot of different ways. We partner with the public school system to interact with our kids in positive, non-enforcement ways, to proactively divert the school to prison pipeline. We need to stop using cash bail that disproportionately discriminates against Black people and poor people. We need to be 100% transparent with the community that we serve. And it's time for us to level the playing field for the Black community and every group of minorities who've been marginalized and taken advantage of by the system for decades.
That's
so
time, Mr. Smith.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. DA Paul Howard.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Howard Jr., and I am the Fulton County District Attorney. I have been a resident of Fulton County for 52 years, and I was elected District Attorney in 1997. That was during the time that our county was overrun with crime. In fact, the city of Atlanta at that time was known as the murder capital of the South. I ran for district attorney based on a very simple promise: to stop the violence. Because every criminal justice expert at that time said the only way that we could reduce violence was for the district attorney's office to be rebuilt and modernized. Well, that's what we've done. We've rebuilt the district attorney's office, and we've introduced many cutting edge improvements. And look at the results. Since 1997, violent crime in Atlanta has been reduced by 70%. Overall crime has dropped by 63%. And 6 of the Fulton County municipalities are now recognized among the 50 safest cities in the state of Georgia. I'm running because I want to make Fulton County a safer place to live. I believe that there are 4 things that are crucial in making sure that this happens, and I hope that we get a chance to talk about each and every one of them during this debate. First of all, we need to continue our focus on violent gang activity. About 36% of the violent crime in our community is caused by gangs, and we should work through police and through the community to prevent gang activity. The second thing that must happen is we must continue to focus on juvenile repeat offenders, and we must reduce that number through innovative programs. The third thing that must happen is we must continue with innovation, with fairness, and with courage. And the fourth thing that I want to do is to extend the excellence of our office. And I believe that one of the things that has illustrated the excellence of our office has been done by you, the voters, because you've elected us 6 times. Thank you,
Mr. Howard. Let me just remind LaShandra, please, when they are at 10 seconds, please let them know that they are at 10 seconds so they can come to a close on their comment. There's a lot of discussion now about criminal justice reform. It has now become a very sexy conversation. It did not used to be. I benefited from a form of criminal justice reform through a First Offenders Act in DeKalb County. It has allowed me to continue working without a felony conviction on my adult record for something I did at the age of 17. What I want to ask every single candidate is this: what is your commitment or continued commitment to criminal justice reform and an actual rehabilitation of those that encounter the criminal justice system? And I will actually start with Mr. Christian Y. Smith on that question, go to Ms. Fani Willis, and then Paul Howard.
Justice reform. That's what people over conviction rates means. I want to implement a system based off of a system put in place by Seattle, Washington in 2011. It's called LEAD. What they do out there, if you're arrested for drug possession or prostitution, they give you the opportunity, instead of prosecution and conviction, to be aligned with treatment and services to help you break out of that lifestyle. And I want to bring that here to Fulton County, specifically with our drug cases and nonviolent cases, to help those folks receive the tools and the resources to help them live better lives that ultimately keeps us all safer. If somebody's busy working, they're not busy committing crimes and jeopardizing our safety. We create a new system of a win-win for everybody. Crime rates go down, property rates go up, school system ratings go up. And Seattle, Washington has been doing this since 2011. So I'm not telling you about something that I think will work. I'm telling you about something that I know will work, that I've seen with my own eyes. I had the opportunity to go out there in 2018. And that's what I plan to bring to Fulton County, to give people who come through the system an opportunity to change their life versus staying on the hamster wheel that we know now of catch and release. We arrest them, we put them in jail. We expect the jail to be used as a homeless shelter, a mental health disability treatment center, and all of these things it wasn't designed to do. We let these people out and expect for them to change their life. Well, we aren't using our brain power and our resources to help break these cycles. So that's what I plan on doing in terms of restorative justice.
Ms. Willis?
In the area of criminal justice reform, I believe that the current office needs an overhaul. The way that cases are processed in the office is all the cases that are brought there are basically charged with no investigation. I think that criminal justice reform starts in the case intake unit. That can be done by proper investigations, not just investigations of the cases, but of the individuals' charged backgrounds. If we did that, we would begin to treat people like human beings and not like widgets. And therefore, we would get people into the right social programs that they need. If that was drug rehabilitation, we would get them into the mental health court if that is what they needed to get better. We would also make sure that people that should not be charged are not charged. We are one of the few counties, sadly, that do not have a pre-indictment diversion program. I think that we could utilize that to change our youth around, to make a difference in the system so that we are not just prosecuting everything. I agree with Mr. Wise. The way business is being done now, it's not working. We are failing at this. And we need to put common sense resources into our criminal justice system. This is not just pie in the sky. In Chicago, they have started to charge less cases. I believe that district attorney said 5,000 less cases, but she has taken those resources to make sure that violent criminals are out the street. On my first day in office, we will start to process cases differently, helping people as opposed to just prosecuting.
Mr. Howard?
Well, let me tell you about some of the things that I have done. And the facts are that we have, over a period of time, prosecuted fewer cases each year. When I started, the office indicted about 17,000 cases. That number now is around 9,000. But I want to talk about some specific areas of criminal justice reform. For instance, in our office, we have made it a point to give people second chances. So we started an expungement unit, and when a person has a felony record that we can expunge, then that is done. I have also, for the past 3 years, tried to get the state legislators to pass a bill giving felony offenders the right to get those records expunged if they do not commit another crime in 5 years. One of the things that we're really proud of is something that we started this year, and that is our conviction integrity unit. We are allowing defendants who might have received an unjust conviction or an unjust sentence in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office to have that case reviewed and have that conviction overturned. In fact, we are the only conviction integrity unit in the entire Southeast. And I hope to get an opportunity to continue those programs.
Okay, thank you. Next question to all candidates, and I will begin this one with Ms. Fani Willis. Second will be DA Paul Howard, and then Christian Wise Smith. What programs, specific programs and policies would you implement as district attorney, or in Mr. Howard's case, already implemented as district attorney, to reduce crime and increase public safety in Fulton County?
The program that I would start on day one that I think will reduce crime is the pre-indictment diversion program. This is not a program where people can just go home after they have done something where we can prove the charges. This would be a program that dealt with the facts of the case and would apply common sense to those facts to get reform for individuals. For instance, if you had someone that had a felony theft charge, we would use theft prevention courses. We would require them to do community service. What we would not do is put a scarlet letter on them of an indictment and prosecute them, making it impossible for them to get work in the future. Once they are a felon and it is difficult to get work, we know we have condemned people to a life of crime. So that is one of the programs that I would implement on day one.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Well, Dr. Ritchie, I think that I would ask the public to look at the things that we have already done. Last year, we instituted what we believe is a major change in our juvenile court system. We started a program called Project Level Up, and interestingly, our partner in that case, in that program, is the Public Defender's Office. And what we're doing is that kids who've already been arrested for 3 times or more, we're working with that offender and the offender's family so that we can keep that child from being arrested the 4th time. The other program that I think is critically important is with gang activity, because we cannot arrest our way out of the gang problem. That's why we've started in the DA's office a gang prevention unit. In fact, on Fairburn Road in Atlanta, we have started the first gang prevention center in the entire state of Georgia. Because what we're trying to figure out is, why do our young people continue to join gangs? By making this reform, we can reduce the amount of gang activity and reduce the number of folks that are arrested and continue to reduce crime in Fulton County.
Thank you. Mr. Wise?
So first, day one, we're going to implement a program called Wise Up. I already have established relationships with 2 companies, one a national company, one a local company, for nonviolent offenders. I'll use the theft example that Ms. Fani gave, where that person will go through a 20-week. Sorry, my phone rang. Can you guys still hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. That person will go through a 20-week long program through these companies. One is a local company in Atlanta, Twice as Nice AV Solutions, where that person will actually be taught a skill and they will earn something tangible at the end of the 20 weeks, a certificate in AV. The other is an engineering IT company. So the point of it is to give, like I mentioned earlier, by providing people the tools and resources to break out of lifestyles of crime. That's how we ultimately make us a safer community, is by providing opportunities. And we can do that by partnering with everybody who's in Fulton County. Like I said, I'm not even DA yet, and I already have 2 relationships ready to go once I get elected, to offer pipelines of jobs and opportunities for people who come through the system. And the second is being proactive, right? Trying to get to folks before crime happens. And that will be through the I Determine My Future program, by partnering with the Fulton County and the APS public school systems to create mentorship programs for our kids, where they see us in positive ways versus the negative interactions that they're used to right now with law enforcement. By doing that, we can actively or proactively divert the school to prison and pipeline. So those are the first two things that I can implement day one.
Thank you. Many prosecutors will brag about their prosecutorial conviction record, as if the conviction is the ultimate goal. But when you look deeper, conviction is not the goal, but actually justice is the goal. So what would you do as DA to make sure that your ADAs are practicing a justice model rather than a conviction model when dealing with cases under your preview? And I will start this one with DA Paul Howard. Second will be Mr. Wise Smith, and then Ms. Willis.
Well, I'm glad for that because what we have done over the years is to make clear that putting people in jail is not our main purpose, but our main purpose is to keep our community safe. That is why in our office we established different divisions, and one of them is our community prosecutors. We actually place community prosecutors, assistant DAs in the communities so that they can deal directly with communities to prevent crime. We've also established a number of crime prevention programs, not designed to put people in jail, but to try to make sure that those individuals, students particularly, do not continue lives of crime. We've had programs like our junior DA program, our legalized program. We've had perfect attendance where we gave away bicycles because we recognize the principle that just putting people in jail is not the principal job of a modern DA, and it should not be the job only of the Fulton County District Attorney.
Thank you. Next.
The foundation of my campaign is people over conviction rates, right? So conviction rates, and most people, when they hear the term justice or prosecutor, they automatically think that it means conviction. And it does not mean that. As you mentioned, it means fairness, it's balance, it's equity. And so that starts from the leadership. So from myself, trickle down to the ADAs, the vision of the office will be, how do we as human beings try to break this person out of the justice system if we can? Now, I'm not talking about the more serious and violent crimes, murder, armed robbery, things along those lines. Those people, we need to make sure that they're off of the streets. But for the other things, where right now the system is set up to be conviction by any means necessary. The system is set up to be a plea mill. The system sometimes throws big recommendations at people, hoping that they'll take something smaller. That's not justice. That's not fair. That's not balance. That's not equity. So the whole purpose and vision of the office will be to make sure that we are looking at each case as a person, not as a number on the file.
Thank you, Rashad Ritchie, for this question. Am I on at this point?
Yes.
This is where I am so glad you asked the question. Of where this office is currently broken. What happens in this office is cases are received by the police department. There is zero investigation done and cases are charged. And from that point on, the goal is conviction. I worked in that office as a prosecutor, not in the charging unit, but in the trial division where those cases were received. And what you found was, because of no investigation, people had sat in jail that should never have been there because the evidence was not there. In other cases, you found the evidence was not there, but possibly they were a danger to the community, but you did not do the proper investigation on the front end. Further, you did not initially look at the person as a human being and see what is causing the issue. The reality is this: when one suffers with a drug problem, they are going to keep committing crimes to feed that drug habit. If one has mental health issues, until you can get them the proper facilities and the proper people around them, they are going to find themselves in the criminal justice system. As long as this DA is allowed to stay, and as long as this office is allowed to process cases in this way, there will only be an eye on conviction. There is no point in doing it on the back end. It must be done from the time a case is received. And if we looked at those cases as not as cases, but as people, both in the victims and in those charged, we would correct the system now and it would be people over convictions.
Mr. Howard, I'm going to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Yeah.
30 seconds.
Rashad, it seems like they're talking about a place that's not the Fulton County DA's office, because I think Ms. Willis will probably remember that we instituted a program called the Complaint Room. We brought in about 50 new employees, and their jobs was to investigate cases. And once we did that, we were able to reduce the jail population from 4,800 to 2,400, saving Fulton County taxpayers more than $50 million annually. So what has been described is exactly the opposite of what we do. In fact, we increased the number of investigators from 12 to 42. The primary job of those investigators is to work to investigate cases. I believe the primary test to determine whether or not a case was sufficient is to look at the appeals rate. Because if you got a bad case, you're not going to get a conviction and it's going to be overturned. And in the Fulton DA's office, our affirmance rate is 98%.
Thank you. Question to every candidate, and I will begin first with Mr. Christian Y. Smith on this one. I will go second to Ms. Fani Willis, and then Paul Howard. What is your policy as it relates to charging juveniles as adults?
Well, outside of the 7 deadlies, I don't think we should. I think we should be more engaged with the school system on figuring out ways to help those kids be kids. A lot of times those kids need counseling. A lot of times those kids live in homes where they don't get what they need. They don't get meals every day. A lot of times those kids are homeless. So outside of the 7 deadlies, which are, murder, rape, armed robbery, aggravated child molestation, like things along those lines, I don't think that we should push toward charging our kids as adults. I think we should figure out ways to help our kids be kids and make them better people before they eventually get older and end up in the system long term.
Thank you. Next.
I don't even understand my colleague's answer. First of all, the only people that would be charged as adults are children that committed those deadly 7. So let's talk about those children. My policy when it comes to those will be the counter opposite as to the way it is handled now in the district attorney's office. Now those are cases, as the other cases, the complaint room processes, as a matter of course, are simply charged as adults. I will have a SB 440 unit, which is the deadly 7 that Mr. Wise mentioned, and have a supervisor there that before we charge any child as an adult, no matter what the crime, which it would have to be one of those deadly 7, it will go under a strict scrutiny. We will look, was this child deprived? Were they in de facto custody? Are there mental health issues? And we will do all we can to keep even those children kept in the juvenile court system. Where we cannot, we will prosecute them justly and fairly.
Ms. Howard?
Well, Rashad, let me tell you that once I took over as district attorney, we significantly reduced the number of juveniles that were charged with adults. It was somewhere in the hundreds, and we reduced it to the 20s. And we still maintain that policy today. In fact, I personally review many of the cases that involve 7 deadly sin cases, wherein we might consider charging someone as an adult. I believe the key, however, is the program that I mentioned already. Because if you look at the children that are charged with the adult, what you'll see is a record of repeat offenders, repeated activity with crime. So what we have to do is once the child is arrested 3 times, and I believe that is a signal to our system that there's a problem. We have to make sure that the child is not arrested the 4th time and does not lead to a more serious offense that would get that child charged as an adult.
Thank you. Next question to all candidates, and this comes from one of our submitted questions before the forum. Studies show that there are racial disparities in drug law enforcement, despite the fact that white citizens and people of color use drugs at roughly the same rate. What would you do to minimize these disparities? And I will begin first this time with DA Paul Howard. I will then go to Mr. Smith and Ms. Willis.
I think that one of the things that will change and has changed this equation is in the selection of one staff. When I started as DA, there were very few minorities even involved as prosecutors. But that is totally different today, because right now in the DA's office, about 70% of the people who work there are African Americans or minorities. So I think one has to understand that in order to make a change, one has to be sensitive to those problems. Now, one of the things that we have done in the DA's office is to not concentrate on charging people with small amounts of drug crimes. What we have focused upon are the more serious drug charges. In fact, our drug unit is referred to as the major drug unit and not a unit that is principally concerned with smaller drug amounts. And I think that these two elements combined, the staff and that policy, we have been able to significantly limit the number of African Americans charged with minor and unnecessary drug charges.
Next.
So let's go back, take a history lesson for a second. So I believe it was in '86, Congress passed legislation where 5 grams of crack cocaine was prosecuted or convicted at rates 100% higher or 100 times higher than powder cocaine. So it was a mandatory 5-year sentence for 5 grams of crack, but it would take 500 grams of powder cocaine to get that same sentence. So that's going to the question directly about the racial disparities. You have to look at the drugs that are used and how they were, how people were convicted based off their racial background and where they were. So I think we need to correct the wrongs of the failed war on drugs. That's one of the things that the DA's office and the justice system should do, is make sure that it doesn't matter what race or what person is using a certain drug, it should be fair across the board. So what I've been preaching and campaigning on is that day one, possession of marijuana, we will no longer prosecute. It's starting to be legalized in a lot of states. I'll be very vocal in terms of lobbying Governor Kemp to issue pardons for marijuana convictions, like several other states are starting to do. Because there are so many people, specifically Black people and minorities, who have felony marijuana convictions on their record, and that prohibits them from getting certain job and housing opportunities today. For possession of all other drugs, I think the answer is treatment and services instead of sentences. If we focus on getting people who are addicted to drugs the help they need, then we help them break out of that lifestyle instead of expecting sitting in jail or prison to fix or cure whatever problems they have. And then we see that person get out and fall back into the same thing. So we actually kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We help the person, the offender, and we help us, because we're helping break that cycle of recidivism or repeat offenders for drug cases.
Thank you, sir. Next.
Rashad, let's start with this. There is no drug unit in the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. The non-complex division, which handles small cases, if you looked at that caseload, what you would find is a lot of those offenses are offenses of people that have drug problems. That's where you're going to see a lot of your repeat offenders. And quite frankly, that's where you're going to see a lot of people that are drug abusers. My office on day one will not be wasting resources on those kind of cases to put a lot of manpower into. We will probably charge those cases, but it will be for a compassionate purpose. People have to be charged to get to go into the accountability courts. Fulton County is blessed to have a drug accountability court. We will put those individuals where they have an obvious record that they are inflicted with drug abuse, because what do you see? Possession of drugs, drug paraphernalia, and theft type cases. We will immediately track those people into accountability courts and try to build them up so we can cure those addictions and put them back into society as a positive member of society.
Dr. Richard, I have to make a correction because there is a drug unit in Fulton County, and the director of the unit is a female. Her name is Kara Convery. I also have to point out that there is an assistant DA already assigned to the accountability court. We've had a DA there for years, working with our criminal justice partners to make sure that people with drug addictions are treated and hopefully return to a progressive life.
All right, thank you. Let's shift focus to specialty courts. So I want to know everyone's direct philosophy about specialty courts in the context of Fulton County. And should we constrict those courts or expand those courts in your interpretation of how they work, how effective they are? And I will begin that question with Mr. Wise Smith, then go to Ms. Fani Willis and Mr. Howard.
Should they be constricted? Absolutely not. They should be expanded. One of the things I plan on doing is creating a military veterans court unit like never before seen. A lot of the drug offenses, particularly military vets who come through the system who struggle with substance abuse and mental health disabilities in ways that most of us can't relate to because of things that they have seen through the military. So instead of funneling those people through the system as easy convictions, we need to invest in partnering with through community resources like the VA. And we do that by having more community court services, more services like you mentioned, instead of constricting those services. The justice system can't keep operating like we've been operating. We'll keep getting the same results that we've been getting. So if we constrict those type of courts, then we eliminate other resources and other alternatives to help people live better lives.
Thank you. Next.
Mr. Ritchie, first of all, just to go back, Ms. Convery is over the gang unit, and I guess now they've thrown the word drug in there as well. But going to the accountability courts, there is already a veterans court, a drug court, and a behavioral court. This is a place where I will put a lot of resources. Right now, the way the district attorney's office operates is they have one DA assigned to all of these courts, which shows you the weight or the unimportance they have placed here. These units will need more DAs and more bodies serving in that unit, both as legal assistants and as ADAs once I become the district attorney, because we are going to fully utilize the court and not treat those courts as a secondhand citizen. There is no way that one assistant district attorney can effectively handle the caseload of drug court, veterans court, and behavioral court, especially if you are really screening the cases when they initially come in and making sure that all the defendants that need those services are put in their appropriate place.
Ms. Howard?
Well, let me tell you, I believe in specialty courts. We operate a number of those courts, the mental health, the veterans court, the drug court, already here in Fulton County. In fact, I believe in specialty courts so much that we have worked together to create a separate court on Fulton Industrial Boulevard, and it's called the Community Court. And what we try to do is to make sure that people that are arrested on the boulevard do not return to that area and commit crimes. And we've been able to do that successfully, reducing crime on Fulton Industrial Boulevard by about 70%. I believe that we should look forward to other specialized courts. And I think one of the specialized courts that I'm looking forward to creating is a gun court in our county. I believe that people, particularly young people that are arrested with guns, that they should be handled in a separate court. They should be counseled to make sure that they do not return again to the community and possess firearms and commit other violent crimes.
Thank you. This question, once again, to every candidate, one of our pre-submitted questions. As district attorney, how would you handle a fatal use of force involving a police officer? I will begin that question with Mr. Howard, then Mr. Smith, and Ms. Willis.
Well, in Fulton County right now, we have the largest public corruption unit in the entire Southeast. We investigate police uses of illegal force. We prosecute cases involving police officers. We investigate them thoroughly. We stand by our courage to move forward in those cases, but we also stand by our courage to explain to the community when the police have done the right thing. We are hoping that by the end of the year, that we will take another step forward. And that step forward is to start a national campaign so that we can require policemen all over the country to wear body cams. We believe that this is an important part of the whole equation of police misuse of force.
Thank you.
Swift transparency is the answer. I think too often the public is left in the dark. The community doesn't know what the DA is doing about cases that involve officer-involved shootings. So I believe that we need to be transparent immediately with the community and let them know what evidence we have that we can disclose, and let them know that we are looking into it in an efficient way and in an immediate way. And that's twofold. That's for the victim's family, and that's also for the officer involved in the case. And going even beyond that, I think unity is the answer. Right now, the Black community, especially minority communities, they are only used to negative interactions with law enforcement. So I'm committed to hosting monthly open and candid dialogue town hall meetings between the law enforcement and the community to try to erase the citizen and police divide, to try to get rid of that negative narrative that's out there right now between especially the Black community and police by having open and honest conversations together in hopes of preventing police-involved shootings with anyone. Hello?
Ms. Willis?
Oh.
This will be an area where we will investigate thoroughly and we will make decisions swiftly. What currently happens with the police-involved shootings is because of all of the political pressure that comes from many, many different directions, these cases are held open too long, leaving the community waiting, often wondering what's going on, often leaving police officers waiting, wondering what's going on too long. We will definitely investigate these cases independently, meaning the district attorney's office will look at them separate and apart from the Georgia Bureau of Investigations. However, although I recognize how difficult those decisions are, we're not going to wait till the week before the statute of limitations runs to make the decision. Once those investigations have been properly completed, we will be transparent with the community and show them what has happened. If the police officer needs to be charged because he had misconduct, then he will be charged. If the police officer acted appropriately, then he will not be charged, and the community will be informed as to why and shown the records.
Rashad, I'd like to point out that there is a great amount of transparency with these cases, because what we do, something that has not been done all around the country, is when incidents happen, we bring the family members in and we talk with them about those cases. One of the things that we've learned is that when we're prosecuting police officers, in many instances, it is not at your advantage to talk about it publicly. That's why we talk about it with the families. The other thing that's important if you look at what we have done in Fulton County, since we have prosecuted police officers, the number of police officers that have been shot and killed has diminished greatly. In fact, the last time an Atlanta police officer was killed was in 2005. When I started as DA, just shortly before that, on average, about 20 African American men were being shot by the police. I believe last year the number had dropped to 2. And I am hoping to continue our efforts to investigate and prosecute any unlawful conduct on the part of police officers.
Let me ask this question.
Hey, real quick, if you're new or you just popped in, just giving you a quick lay of the land. This is the debate that Fani Willis had with, at that time, the sitting district attorney, Paul Howard, who she happened to work for, and Christian Wise Smith. He was running against her. So he's running against her then, and now he's running against her now. And I kind of see how she won. I do see how she won. I don't feel like Christian Wise Smith comes across with his ideas polished. And I feel like, sadly, Paul Howard has a lot of baggage, and people just thought that they were going to get a better option in voting for her. So that's what I think happened. But just in case anybody was wondering, I saw a couple of questions about when did this happen. This was in 2019. So they were getting ready to vote in July of 2020. So she was only district attorney a few months before the whole November election thing started. And her, that was like her breakout moment. Besides the RICO case was this whole thing charging the former president. So anyway, that was it. I just wanted to make sure I answered that. There was a question right here. As an outsider with no skin in the game in Georgia, I think she sounds more forceful, not liking much of what they've said. I just think she sounded more polished. Now, she could be reading, I saw somebody said she was reading a teleprompter. I don't know if they had the questions before so they could kind of plan it out, because, you have time that you have to speak in. So, she does sound much more polished. I got to give her credit for that. Paul Howard, I think, has a lot more of this is what I've done. This is what I'm doing, and such like that. And then lastly, I just don't think Christian Wise Smith comes across like he needs a speechwriter, and he needs to practice a lot more than he's already done. That's just my little 2 cents. But let me see what else we got. Yeah, she sounded polished. There we go. Now, I'm not saying that she was the right kind of person, Tawanda. I'm definitely not saying that she's a good person. I'm just saying she sounds polished, like she knows what she's talking about. I wouldn't be surprised if they already knew the questions and they had time to prepare their answers. So that's just my little 2 cents right there. All right, let me get out of the way and I'll let y'all finish.
Before we shift, we've covered many times in CBS 46 News advocacy groups inside of Fulton County who say there is a revolving door in the judicial system or in the justice system that allows for individuals to come in and come back out. I just want to know your exact thoughts about that sentiment. And I will begin this one with Ms. Willis. We will go to DA Paul Howard, and in that with Mr. Wise Smith.
I think that that's absolutely correct, that there is a revolving door in the criminal justice system. The Atlanta Police Department recently did a study, and what they would tell you is that 40 to 50% of all violent crime was committed by the same people, the same 400 or 500 people. We have got to stop that cycle, and that has to be done by common sense prosecution, getting the people the services that they need, and doing proper investigations and being able to take cases to trial with qualified and stable staff that is with the office. And so that those two things combined will stop the revolving door.
Ms. Howard?
Well, I believe if we are to identify the culprit that has created the revolving door impression in Fulton County, I think that what you'll see is the non-complex court. It was a court that's called the Rocket Docket Court. It was started in 2006. I objected to the start of the court. because what they planned was that 70% of the cases processed by that court would be handled by 3 magistrates. And the only way that they've been able to handle those cases is by using something called a non-negotiated plea. Using the non-negotiated pleas, what has happened is in 52% of the instances where the assistant DAs are recommending jail time, the judges are only sentencing them in 12%. So that means that in every day and every week, about 42% of those defendants are going back into the streets. And our studies have also found that the recidivism rate from that non-complex court is 78%, while the national recidivism rate is only 34%. So I have said it on many times, one of the things that needs to happen in our system is to get rid of the non-complex docket court because it promotes repeat offenders.
Mr. Wise Smith.
There absolutely is a problem with the revolving door in the justice system, and we need to break that. We do that by helping align people with treatment and services on nonviolent offenses if we can. And we do that by creating a system that starts with leadership that isn't conviction by any means necessary. Yes, there is a non-complex court right now, but the DA has the power to lead those attorneys in that division to say, hey, we're going to divert cases, or hey, we're going to align people with services and treatment instead of push them by plea or conviction by any means necessary. And let's go back even further. Let's go back to cash bond. When you have somebody who's sitting in jail for 90 days because they can't afford to pay a bond, that person loses their job. They lose their house. So the recidivism cycle starts way before you get to the plea phase. It starts at the initial phase. And we need to revamp all of that. We get rid of cash bonds and we give people the means to keep their employment in their houses just to ensure that they come back to court. Well, if they're employed and they have opportunities, that will also help them break out of the system. Right now, so much about our system needs a change where it only cares about convictions and it only cares about money. We need to get back to the root of being human beings and figuring out better and wiser ways to lead our justice system. Because if we help the people committing these offenses, ultimately we help all of us. We keep us safer by giving people other opportunities.
Thank you. For this next segment, I am now switching over to Ms. Elise Fisher, President of the Cedar Grove Association, who will ask you questions directly from the viewing audience.
Thank you, Dr. Ritchie. This first question is for Mr. Smith and Ms. Willis. What do you think of the Conviction Integrity Unit that was mentioned earlier? And how do you feel about the Sentencing Review Board and the idea of looking at cases where sentencing was extreme? We'll start with Mr. Smith and then move to Ms. Willis.
I think the Conviction Integrity Review Unit, one, is long overdue, but then you got to think about whose cases are they reviewing, right? We've had the same DA for over 20 years, so it sounds like they're reviewing a lot of cases that could have been handled differently from the first place. And so what was the second part of the question about tougher sentences? I'm sorry.
What do you feel about the Sentencing Review Board and the idea of looking at cases where sentencing was extreme?
I absolutely believe that we should do that, especially if, like I mentioned earlier, about some legislation that was passed from years ago, if it's old law, if people, if there are racial disparities or other things that we need to look at, we absolutely need to look at those to make sure that we're being fair across the board.
Thank you. Ms. Willis?
I think it was created with insincerity in a year where we're coming up on an election. But in theory, I think that the Sentencing Review Board is great. We are clearly looking at cases that would have been prosecuted from 1997 till present under the current administration. This goes back to my original ideology that cases need to be looked at from the time they are received so that we are not just seeking convictions, but we are processing cases fairly. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the next DA who takes over will need to, one, make sure as business goes forward, it is done in a way that is fair, and will also have the responsibility of correcting a lot of the wrongs that were done in the initial processing going back to 1997.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Mr. Howard.
Well, do I get a chance to talk about the Conviction Integrity Unit?
No, sir. That was a question for Miss. That was a question for the two of them. Next question. How do, right, for you, Mr. Howard, it's how do you. For the other two candidates, how would you address the issue of staff retention and its impact on the ability of the criminal justice system?
Well, let me tell you, when I started in the DA's office, we only had a staff of about 64 lawyers, and the turnover rate in 1 year averaged about 50%. We have been able to raise the number of lawyers now to 109 lawyers, and our turnover rate is 11%, and sometimes it has been low as 6%. The working in the DA's office is a public service job. It is a job where young lawyers come and they learn a craft and they move on. But I am proud to say that we have had an outstanding record of employment with Fulton, with lawyers in our office. And I believe one of the things that illustrates our outstanding record is that 40 of the lawyers who served in the Fulton County DA's office have now become judges. 2 of them, in fact, federal judges.
Thank you. Ms. Willis?
The retention rate at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office is terrible, and the DA knows it. He has about a 90% lack of retention rate. Those lawyers are some of the best paid lawyers in the state of Georgia when you're talking about public service. But because they refuse to work under this current manager, you find them in Gwinnett, you find them in Henry, you find them in Cobb, you find them in DeKalb. Why is this a problem? Because us as the taxpayers are training these lawyers and we are training investigators, and we spend resources training them and letting them learn their trade to take their services to surrounding counties. I can assure you, people do not leave Manhattan and go work in New Jersey. People should not leave Atlanta and want to go work in Henry County. No disrespect to Darius Patillo. That is just the reality of anyone who knows the way business is done. You want to practice law in Atlanta. It is a huge problem when you do not have, attract, and retain the best and the brightest minds. You lose the ability to prosecute effectively, the ability to evaluate cases properly, and that leads to injustice.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I think it starts with leadership, right? And the mentality and the culture that the leader starts for the office. Right now, that office is led and driven out of fear. The assistant district attorneys don't have discretion on cases. And I think this is important for the public to know what the culture is like inside of there. That plays into the retention rate. If people come to work every day scared of getting reprimanded or scared or walking on eggshells, or if they are in fear of being harassed in any type of way, that is an unsafe and a toxic working environment that ultimately hurts the public that we're supposed to serve. Because if you can't keep people, if you have new people or cases passing hands so many times, that's a disservice to the public. So it starts with leadership. It starts with creating a culture where people can come to work and be properly trained. People can come to work and feel safe, and people can come to work knowing that they will be respected and valued because they have gone through law school and earned a bar license, and they will be given some discretion in terms of prosecuting cases the right way, where it's not just my way or the highway like it is now.
I really think it is.
Okay, I'm gonna jump in real quick, and I just want to make a comment that I mentioned here. I personally think Fani Willis knows exactly what she's doing. She does not respect Christian Y. Smith at all. She doesn't have anything. She has nothing for him. when she addresses him, she sounds like, I don't know what you're talking about. You sound silly. You sound ignorant. And everything she says to Paul Howard is always contradictory. That they just started the gang unit. They don't, the name of the person is this. Every time she speaks on it, she already knows. She came across much more polished. She knows what she's doing. I just think, yeah, the other two, Paul Howard is trying to defend himself. Christian Wise is trying to get himself into the mix. Fani is attacking both of them. And I think she's doing a pretty good job. Again, I don't know how prepared she is. I don't know how she got prepared, but she's doing a much better job than them. But I'm going to let Paul Howard finish up. I'm going to let you finish up real quick, Mr. Howard. Hold it down. Let me see. Zencat, we're going to have to put you in punishment. You're gonna get put in punishment right here. This is why you're going to get put in punishment right there. You're out of control. We can't have that out of controlness. We can't. Fani is using this as a public exit interview. Wow. I mean, that's why I'm saying, like, that's why I think she should. Well, one reason I think that's why she doesn't want to debate is because Christian Y. Smith maybe has gotten himself together. Kramer, the young lady Kramer, is ready to attack. And I think they would have her head on a platter because everything she said here, she hasn't done much of it. So I do think that it's a public exit interview, and I think it would be the same thing for her if she had debated this week. But let us go. Let's go. Oh no, I do think she had something on them. Paul Howard had from my understanding, Paul Howard had a pretty speckled past, so he wasn't the best guy on the block. So I think that's part of the problem. But let's let this finish. Let's go.
Outrageous to say that 90% of the lawyers' jobs are not filled here in Fulton County. Because let me tell you, there's no way that you can, over a period of 23 years, reduce crime in the community by 70%. There's no way that you can maintain a conviction rate of 92% or an affirmation rate of 98% if you don't have employees. That is simply an exaggeration. The reason that the other counties are trying to
10
recruit
seconds.
lawyers from Fulton County is because our lawyers are well trained and they perform well. And that is the reason that lawyers from our county are so respected that they have been.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Howard.
Thank you.
May I
30-second rebuttal. I'm sorry, Ms. Willis, this is a forum, not a debate.
Thank you.
On to the next question. And just so you know, many of the questions that came through on the two different chat streams have to do with the treatment of juveniles in our system. And so I'll start with one and we'll move to a couple others. The first one, what specific actions will you take or have you taken to interrupt the quote unquote school to prison pipeline? Ms. Willis, let me start with you.
The school to prison pipeline is a huge problem. We know that we have got to be a partner with our school system. We have 15 different school systems in this county, 15 different cities, and each of those cities have different school systems, as well as you have Fulton County school system. We are going to have to work in partnership with those school systems, the attorneys volunteering with those children, but also the children that get caught up in the juvenile court system. We want to make sure that the brown children from South Fulton, where I reign, are treated no different than white children in North Fulton, that they are all given the same opportunities and that we pour into them. This is one of the places my platform is the most important, because these are the people that we can correct, that we can change, and then we can make sure that they know that they are supported. And we are not here to be just the big bad wolf to prosecute them, but we want to see change in their life, that we do value them as human beings and know how much they are worth.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
Well, this is something that we are exceptionally proud of in our office with the creation of our Project Level Up. Our two main partners are the Fulton County School System and the Atlanta Public School System. And what we're doing is designed to do exactly what that question asks, is to interrupt this pipeline. We are taking kids who've been arrested 3 times or more, and we are looking at their family situations, looking at their homes to see whether or not their parents are employed, so that maybe we can provide them with employment, provide them with a better home. And that is the way that we believe that you can interrupt the cycle. And we are doing this with the Fulton County Public Defender's Office. And this is not a pipe dream, but this is a reality now in our juvenile court system.
All right, I'm back again. Hey, it's me. All right. No, I want you to commit to one or the other, Shara. Stop being difficult. No, there's not a none of the above option. Okay, this was a good question. And because Flying Girl asked, and that's Betsy in Singapore, said, did COVID mess with the crime stats they're quoting? I know it slowed down people going through the court systems. This is before COVID. So this is actually, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this, I want to say it's like November in 2019. So COVID officially hit Georgia in March of 2020. So technically this is before then. So now, of course, once March 2020 hit, everything was kind of set asunder. So I don't know what it did to the stats after the fact, but these stats that they're quoting now are not going to be affected by that because it was before the before C-19 popped off here in Atlanta and here in Georgia rather. Wait, says a lot about her queen bee attitude. Oh no, I don't think it was a mistake that she said that she reigns in South Fulton. I thought that was really weird. Here it is right here. She did say that. She did say in South Fulton where I reign. That was really strange. I also don't know. I kind of want to understand. She said in Fulton County, there are 15 school systems. No, there's not. There's only one school district. It's Fulton County School District. I don't know if she's counting private schools or charter schools or what. Even some of the public schools are charter in Fulton County. I had no idea what she was talking about, but that's beside the point. All right, let's let them finish up. I'll get out of your way.
Thank you. Mr. Smith.
So if you heard me talk about my background earlier, I mean, of course, this is near and dear to my heart. I've visited schools in Fulton, DeKalb, Gwinnett, all the way through Athens counties, just trying to be a ray of light to our kids. So day one, I will focus on creating a partnership with the school systems in Fulton County. I also served on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation that created the At Promise Center. And I played a big role in creating that. And the At Promise Center provides a place for kids to come with wraparound services. And it's also to interact with members of the law enforcement community in positive, non-enforcement ways. So that's what it's about. That's what being proactive is about. It's just letting kids see us be human beings and not seeing us in negative ways where we are there to criminalize or punish them. And so by partnering with the school system, by partnering with community providers like the Police Foundation, the I Promise Center, PAD, all of these other people who do great work out in the community to get to our kids before they have been arrested, before they get in trouble, just so we can help inspire them to reach for the stars and hope that they don't fall into the justice system, is very near and dear to my heart and very important to what I believe an assistant district attorney should do to help keep us safer and to inspire our kids to be better.
Thank you. This next question is around, there are a few questions around the juvenile point system. I'll try to consolidate them into one simple question. What is your view on the Georgia juvenile point system? And what do you think we should be doing at the local or county level to make improvements in this system? We'll start with Mr. Howard, we'll move to Mr. Smith, and we'll end with Ms. Willis.
Well, the juvenile justice point system had a good foundation. What they planned to do was to make sure that juveniles were not unnecessarily incarcerated. But what has happened over time in Fulton County, in our juvenile system, even when the point system indicates that children should be incarcerated, in many of the cases, the judges are not following even what the point system says. I believe that the juvenile system has to be changed. And that is why the public defender and I are working together, incidentally, with the At Promise Center to change the way that juvenile cases are processed. We have to begin to look at juvenile families and not just looking at the juvenile defendant. I think that if we would do that as an entire system, then we could begin to change the equation regarding juvenile offenses in our county.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Ms. Willis was, you said Ms. Willis was second. My apologies. I don't like the juvenile point system. And it's funny to mention Mr. Howard mentioned the I Promise Center. It's like I said, I was instrumental in creating it. But yeah, I think we should partner with the school system and providers to help our kids versus setting our kids up for failure. And I think that the point system right now, the way it works, it sets our kids up for failure. It doesn't do anything to get our kids off track. I think it perpetuates them into ending up in the system as adults.
Thank you. Ms.
I
Willis?
I also am not a fan of treating children like an object where you put points on them and then there is a certain reality. I think each of our children has to be looked at individually. They all have different needs. They all need different services. We do have to evaluate their conduct and work on correcting that conduct. But that conduct has to be looked at as each individual child and what led that child to them being a part of the criminal justice system and how can we correct it. So I am not a fan of that system. That is not where we're going to be putting resources on just labeling children and putting points on them, but rather feeding into them, pouring into them, and figuring out what services the child before us needs so that we can correct their life's trajectory.
Thank you. One last question, 30 seconds for each candidate. What is your stance on mandatory minimum sentencing and why? Let's start with Ms. Willis.
I don't like the mandatory minimum sentencing, but obviously that is an issue for the legislature. They are the ones that make the laws. I do not like them though, because I think that you have to look at cases as individuals and not as just putting a certain number on a case. So I am not a fan of them, but I do understand that that is a change that will have to be made with the legislature.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Same here. I mean, that's what people over conviction rates is about. It's about people. And I mentioned that earlier. Each case is a person. It's not a number on the file. I think you have to look at the specific facts for each case to determine the best outcome or the best recommendation. So I also do not like mandatory minimums. And I also mentioned earlier, and I'll mention now, I'm going to be very vocal in lobbying our legislators and lobbying Governor Kemp on correcting some of the wrongs of the past.
Thank you. Mr. Howard?
I have looked at this issue very carefully, and I am very much in favor of everybody receiving the same sentence. In every situation where the minimum mandatories are not used, what we find is that African Americans will receive higher sentences
5 seconds.
than Americans. I believe that the best way and the appropriate way and the constitutional way for people to be sentenced.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Howard.
The same sentence.
Mr. Ritchie, I believe we're done.
All right. Thank you, candidates. You can now prepare for your outro. We will extend 2 minutes for your closing remarks. It will go in this order. 1, Paul Howard. 2, Mr. Smith. And 3, Ms. Willis.
Are we ready?
Yes.
First of all, I would like to thank all of the folks that are listening and participated in this forum. I'd like to thank all of the hosts and the moderators who put this program together. We're living through a very difficult time because of the coronavirus. And my heart goes out to all of the first responders and all of the medical personnel who are.
Wait, hold on. I take that back then. Maybe I had my dates wrong. I take that back. I do apologize. He said we're working through the coronavirus. Okay. When was this then? Okay, I need to do some more work then. I done messed that all up. I apologize. Please forgive me. Email management. Let's get it together, Jason. Let's
working hand in hand with this virus every day. I particularly, I feel for people that have contracted this disease here in this county and all over the country. But I'm also really saddened by people that have lost a family member or friend. I believe one of the things that this pandemic shows us is what we need is stable, experienced, innovative leadership. And that is what I stand for. There is nothing more important than the safety of our families and our communities. And that is why I feel that there's nothing more important than the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I thank you for the opportunity to serve, and I am looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you guys for the opportunity to be a part of this, to meet me and hear my message. My thoughts and prayers are for all of us right now. It's a tough time for everybody with the COVID-19, but it also directly ties into the justice system. There are so many people who are sitting in the Fulton County Jail who didn't need to be there because they couldn't afford to pay their bond. And people in close proximity like that in jails, they can't social distance. And that impacts the people who work at the jails, who come home to us, and creates that exposure. So it all ties into the justice system. And I know that I am proposing something very new, but if you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, that is the definition of insanity. So I'm asking you guys to have faith in us as people, to make the justice system care more about people and not about conviction rates, not about money, not about statistics, but we create a wiser and safer system for us all if we use our brain power, our resources, and our hearts as human beings to treat human beings like human beings and not numbers on files. So we do that a couple different ways. We right the wrongs of the past. We get proactive and divert the school to prison pipeline with our kids. We end the revolving door of mass incarceration. We level the playing field for every group that the justice system has marginalized for decades. It's time for somebody to finally step up and say, hey, enough is enough. It's time for somebody to call out the racial disparities and the gender disparities, somebody to not shy away from their Blackness and say, hey, I want to do this, not only for the Black community, but for every minority community, for every group that's been marginalized. And I am that person. My background uniquely separates me from any DA in this country because I can relate on a deeper human being level as to the root causes of crime and how to break people out of those cycles, because you're looking at living proof for somebody who overcame hell you can't imagine to be sitting here today. So I appreciate the opportunity, and I will be honored to earn your vote on June 9th as Fulton County DA. Thank you.
The current district attorney offers you more of the same. He believes after 24 years that the office is his and that the citizens serve at his pleasure. He is wrong. He talks about programs which are great ideals but have no substance. He talks about statistics but fails to tell you that Atlanta is behind New York, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, San Antonio, Dallas, Jacksonville, San Francisco, Seattle, Denver, and Boston. And that's according to FBI stats. If you want an office that does not treat victims and accused persons as widgets, but rather as human beings, then you must make a change. And that change is a vote for Fani Willis for district attorney on June 9th, 2020. Our administration will be one where you, the community, will have a seat at the table, where we will have transparency and we will listen to your ideals as we help the people that are charged and the victims alike. We will implement a pre-indictment program. We will fully use our accountability courts to help charged persons change their lives. We will do real investigations, which will lead to clearing innocent persons of false charges, ultimately clearing out part of the jail. We will do real investigations so those who choose to terrorize our community are removed. We will bring back the best and the brightest minds to serve the office, and most importantly, you, the citizens and the taxpayers. We will not waste your taxpayer dollars on litigation for misconduct of me or any of my executive staff. The county recently paying 285 of your tax dollars. With your vote for Fani Willis as district attorney, leadership will emerge and integrity will restore. Thank you.
Mr. Howard, I'm giving you 30 seconds to respond. She did mention you directly.
Well, I believe that the main barometer of the job that we have done is people of our county. And the people of our county have elected us this time. I believe also the main barometer uh, with the respect shown to our office and others is illustrated by the 40 judges and 2 other public elected officials who were former members of the Fulton County DA's office. And I hope that you would vote for me on June 9th so that we can continue the excellence that we've shown to this date. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. And to all of the candidates, I appreciate your time today and for you taking of the awesome responsibility of running for public office. I now turn this forum back over to Councilwoman Willis and Councilwoman Gums.
All right, that was the end of it. The end of it, boy, that last little sentence did not age well at all. But Fani Willis loved saying that about Paul Howard, that, you know, he was costing taxpayers money. He was involved in litigation, blah, 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 blah. She loved saying that. And look, I mean, literally like textbook boilerplate. She has the exact same problems. Dare I even say greater than Paul Howard, because Paul Howard's was stretched out over a long period of time, and hers has been literally within since this video, so 3 years. And I just think it's interesting, man. I really do appreciate y'all sitting in here with us. This is our first watch party. That was kind of fun. I appreciate it. Looks like a lot of good feedback, lots of good commentary going back and forth. It seems like you all liked it, and I think that's fair. Can I get this before we leave, before we shut it down? Do you think I could get a real quick consensus? What's your overall consensus if we did this? Not all the time, but just maybe just a large scale. We just watch a video together and comment in the chat. If you like that type of thing, how about we drop a fire emoji? They will go do fire emoji if you really liked it. And if you didn't, then drop any other kind of emoji. How about that one? Because I'd love to hear what you all thought about it. And if this might maybe something we could do a little bit more frequently. No, we're not going to do like a bootleg copy of King Kong versus, you know, Godzilla, which probably was a good movie. But maybe like a next debate or something like that. Because I do think they are having the Fulton County DA debate right now. So that, who knows? Maybe we can do that one day soon. Okay, seems like the general consensus from the best live chat on the planet is that y'all like that. Okay, cool. I'm glad we did that. Shout out to whomever suggested it, and I'm glad we did it because it did. I like that. That was fun. Definitely something I enjoyed finding the video and kind of being able to look back in time and say, oh, this is what they said, and now we can kind of compare what they said. Somebody said it earlier, you know, talk is cheap. But definitely comparing what they said to now what they have done, what Fani Willis has done. And the fire truck is cool. I think the overall consensus is that we'll do this more often for sure. So, no, that was cool. I appreciate it, though. And kind of like a live reaction. We can all react to it simultaneously in real time. I think that came out pretty well. But yeah, I really do appreciate y'all so much. I just want to say that, as I always do. I appreciate you all taking the time to hang out with me. I'm glad that you're finding value in what I'm doing here. It really means a lot. So I appreciate it. Thank you for checking out the live stream from earlier with Kiana and Rick and Kevin and April. That was fantastic to have them in the studio to do a live evaluation, a live stream. Okay. Oh, and by the way, I did look at the poll, and I'm just going to end it. Looks like most of us said that they felt that Fani had won the poll, had won the debate. 81%. 18 said that Christian Y. Smith, and none of you said that Paul Howard won. That's interesting. Okay. But I appreciate that as well. So I appreciate y'all supporting and checking out what we did, that content creators live meet and greet in the studio today. That was a lot of fun. We're looking forward to doing that again, as well as this live watch party. That was cool to do that, and I'm glad that you all had a chance to enjoy that. Now, yeah, I think it's fair to say the overall consensus is I think we can understand how people made the choice to hire her a couple of years ago. Whether we like it or not, whether it's the right decision or not is not the argument. But I do think she came across, as I said before, way more polished than Christian Y. Smith. And sadly, I think she knew the assignment was to attack Paul Howard. And I think she did a great job doing that. And talking about, okay, I see a lot of Bible verses running across the screen. So I see you all are having a discussion about justice. I believe you're having a discussion about justice and whether or not you should have bias toward somebody's socioeconomic status. That's what I believe you're talking about, which is kind of cool. So I'm glad y'all are able to talk about that. Tomorrow, we're going to be I'm going to be looking at Michael Eric Dyson talking about not only Trump, not only talking about conservatives, not only talking about Candace Owens, but overall just Michael Eric Dyson on the Breakfast Club. That'll be tomorrow night. We'll do that probably 8 o'clock as well tomorrow night. And then we'll just wrap up the week and see what else is going on, because next week is probably going to be just as busy and just as crazy. There's a lot of stuff I didn't even talk about this week. So didn't talk about the Trump case. Didn't talk about the woman that's suing Fani Willis. I didn't talk about Fani Willis in Miami. Didn't talk about a lot of stuff. So we got a lot to talk about. So hopefully we'll have a chance to do that tomorrow and Lord willing next week. And I appreciate each and every one of y'all. So thank you so much for that. Let's get ready to have a wonderful Lord's Day on tomorrow. President Firstborn is still at the prom. So I'm going to get done here. I'm going to go scope out, make sure she gets home safely. So everybody, thank you so very much for that. I'll see you all real soon, Lord willing. Until then, everybody, grace and peace. Take care.